The smell of warm apple pie filled the kitchen that night, soft and harmless, like any other family dinner. The clinking of silverware, the low hum of conversation, the soft flicker of the old chandelier, all ordinary until it wasn't. My father set his glass down, looked at me across the table, and said in a tone as casual as if he were commenting on the weather, "No man wants a woman who just stays home." My brother laughed. My mother's smile froze halfway. I heard the sound of my fork slip from my hand, hit the plate, and ring out a small metallic sound, but inside me something enormous cracked. The Harper's house in Portland wasn't fancy, but it had that kind of comfortable order my father took pride in: clean floors, well-kept furniture, a clock that chimed precisely at 6. The wooden table had been in our family for 20 years, and every dinner was supposed to feel like a ritual of gratitude. That evening, though, gratitude felt like something I had to fake. Dad sat at the head of the table as he always did in his neatly pressed shirt, even though he'd been retired for years. Edward Harper, former SoFi branch manager, old school to the core. He still read the business section every morning with his coffee, muttering about real jobs and real money. My mother Margaret sat opposite me, her hair pinned up like she was still trying to keep peace between us. My brother Evan, the golden boy of the family, had just come from work at a brokerage firm. His tie was loose, his grin easy. And then there was me, Lena Harper, 33, single, staying home. The TV in the living room played quietly in the background. A news anchor announced SoFi launches new blockchain integration this quarter, making digital asset management more accessible than ever. Dad snorted. "Crypto again. People are losing their minds. You can't eat Bitcoin. You can't touch it. Give me gold or a stock I can actually read." I took a slow sip of water, watching the steam rise from the pie dish. He didn't know that the blockchain company in that headline, Aurora Chain Capital, was mine. "Maybe the world's just changing, Dad," I said, keeping my voice even. "Not everything needs changing," he replied without looking up. "Some things work fine the way they are." Dinner continued heavy with small talk. Evan bragged about his firm's latest client. My mother asked me if I'd been out much. I gave short answers, the kind that don't invite more questions. But Dad wasn't done. He folded his napkin precisely in half, then leaned back. "You should get out there, Lena. Do something real. Staying home all day? What kind of life is that?" I smiled politely. "I'm doing fine, Dad." He gave me that look, the one that meant he didn't believe a word I said. "Fine isn't the future. I'm talking about stability. A husband, kids, some responsibility. No man wants a woman who just stays home." Evan chuckled. "Maybe she's waiting for Bitcoin to propose." My mother murmured, "Evan, stop," but her voice was soft, unsure. I didn't answer. I stared at the pie on my plate untouched. My fork trembled in my hand. The scent of cinnamon and butter turned bitter in my throat. I remembered being 16, showing my father a coding project I'd made on an old laptop. He'd told me, "That's cute, honey, but you can't live off imagination." Now, decades later, he was still saying the same thing, just in fancier words. "I'll figure it out," I said finally. "You're 33, he shot back. "You should have figured it out by now." The room fell silent. Even the TV seemed to hush itself. My fork slipped clinking against the plate. It wasn't anger yet, just that tightness before something breaks. I looked up, met his eyes, and said quietly, "Maybe that's why I stopped trying to fit into what you call figured out." No one spoke. Evan's smirk faded. My mother looked down at her plate. Dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Only the clock on the wall filled the silence, ticking like it was counting down to something inevitable. After dinner, I helped my mother clear the table. The air still smelled of apples and discomfort. She moved gently, stacking plates, her eyes soft with worry. "Don't be angry with him," she said almost in a whisper. "Your father he believes in what he knows." "I know," I said, forcing a smile. "That's why he's never known me." She sighed, resting her hand on mine. "He means well." Meaning well, 2 words that excused a lifetime of small wounds. I kissed her cheek, said goodnight, and went upstairs to my room. My workspace wasn't impressive, just a wooden desk, an aging laptop, and a corkboard covered in notes. But on that desk sat a world no one in my family believed existed. I opened the laptop. The screen glowed to lifelines of code scrolling across, familiar and calming. Password, Aurora0719. The dashboard appeared Aurora Chain Capital. Charts, wallet balances, growth curves. My portfolio had climbed 14% this quarter alone. SoFi's API had just approved our integration request, a deal I'd closed under a pseudonym 3 weeks ago. Somewhere in a boardroom full of men in suits, my name didn't exist. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I checked the investor chat window. Maya co-founder new update. SoFi CEO just mentioned our blockchain on CNBC. We're officially trending. Me good. Keep it quiet. We stay invisible until we're undeniable. I stared at those words after sending them. Invisible until undeniable. That was my entire life in a sentence. I rubbed my eyes. From the hallway came the muffled sound of my father's voice talking on the phone. Yeah, she's still living here. No job. I keep telling her she needs to do something with her life. He laughed softly, unaware that the woman he pitied had built a fund worth more than his entire retirement. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly, and whispered to no one. Not everything visible has value, and not everything unseen is worthless. Downstairs, the dishwasher hummed. In the quiet, I imagined the fork still resting on my plate, the one that had slipped from my hand. A tiny mistake, but it had made a sound that refused to fade. I thought about what Dad had said, no man wants a woman who stays home. Maybe he was right. But what he'd never understand was that I didn't stay home because I was afraid of the world. I stayed because I was building one. I clicked the monitor off, watching the reflection of my own face fade into darkness. Tomorrow I'd send the final transaction confirming Aurora's next acquisition, a blockchain security firm in Singapore. The press wouldn't know who led it. But one day when they traced it back, the truth would surface quietly like a ripple spreading from a single drop. Upstairs, my father's footsteps crossed the hallway. He paused outside my door as if considering whether to knock. He didn't. When the silence returned, I smiled. Not from victory, but from clarity. Some things weren't meant to be explained. Some things were meant to be shown when the world was ready to see them. I whispered into the dark, "Goodnight, Dad." Then I opened my notebook and wrote one line beneath the Aurora logo. They said no man wants a woman who stays home. Good. I'm not building a home for men. The morning after the dinner felt unnaturally quiet. My father had already left for his usual walk. My mother was in the garden trimming roses. The house, bathed in soft gray light, felt hollow in a way I couldn't name. I stood in the kitchen holding my coffee, watching steam rise from the cup like a thin ghost of everything I hadn't said the night before. Upstairs, my laptop waited, its glow still faintly visible through the crack in my door. I walked back into my room, sat at the desk, and opened Aurora Chain Capital's dashboard again. The numbers flickered, alive lines of growth transactions scrolling like heartbeats. The fund had grown another 3% overnight. My hobby, as Dad called it, had just outperformed 3 major ETFs. A message popped up. Maya Morning Boss. SoFi's PR team just posted the CEO interview. He mentioned blockchain as a supercycle technology. We're in that cycle, Lena. Me, I saw. Let's not celebrate yet. The market remembers fast and forgets faster. Maya, you always say that. You ever gonna enjoy winning? I smiled faintly. Winning was never the goal. Survival was. By 10 a.m., the local cafe was full of people on laptops pretending to change the world. I took my usual corner seat by the window, a plain black hoodie, hair tied back. No one gave me a second glance. That anonymity was a currency I wasn't ready to spend. Maya arrived 5 minutes late, a latte in one hand, her tablet in the other. Her energy always moved faster than the room. She dropped into the seat across from me, eyes shining. You watched the SoFi CEO this morning. Yeah, I said. He called blockchain the next supercycle, like AI. She grinned. That's good for us. Make people trust the tech again. Trust is a funny thing, I said. They don't trust it until they need it. Maya laughed. You sound like someone who's been burned. Maybe I have. I sipped my coffee, eyes drifting to the rain starting to tap the window. Or maybe I just know that everything built on trust can collapse overnight. She tilted her head. Even families, that one hit closer than she realized. Especially families, I said quietly. We spent the next hour going over updates. Aurora had just secured its third round of silent investors, mostly through encrypted referrals. Each deal moved through multi-signature wallets, no leaks, no names. Maya handled the technical infrastructure. I handled strategy, risk management, and human behavior. My old life as a stay-at-home daughter was the perfect cover for someone managing hundreds of millions in decentralized assets. Maya leaned in. SoFi wants to test integration next week. They'll use Aurora as one of the pilot funds. I raised an eyebrow. They don't know who we are. Exactly why they trust us. We're a clean ghost on the ledger. I love that phrase, a clean ghost. That was what I wanted to be, invisible but undeniable. By noon, we packed up. Outside, the rain had turned steady, soft, and rhythmic. As we walked to our cars, Maya asked, "You ever gonna tell your family what you do?" I shook my head. They already decided who I am. No sense rewriting a book they stopped reading years ago. You don't want credit. Credit is noisy. Results are quiet. She laughed. You and your quotes. You should write a book one day. I smirked. Maybe I already am, just not with words. Back home, the house smelled like soup and rain. My mother hummed softly in the kitchen, wiping the counter. She glanced up. You went out today. That's nice to see. Had some work. Work, she blinked. Are you doing accounting again? Something inside me almost laughed. Something like that. She smiled, relieved, and I realized that for her, peace meant pretending everything was simple. I couldn't take that from her. Upstairs, I logged back in. Aurora's analytics screen glowed in green, Bitcoin rebounding, Ethereum up 4%, the new blockchain education fund gaining traction. I clicked into the SoFi integration beta and saw a familiar name in the testing dataset, Edward Harper, my father. His account had been imported automatically from SoFi's retirement division. His savings, his transactions, all now sitting in a digital system he didn't believe in. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The irony burned. I opened the chat window. Maya, what's wrong? Me. One of our beta testers is my father. Maya, that's poetic. Me, it's dangerous. Maya or perfect. He's about to learn what home his daughter's been building. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain hadn't stopped and the sound of it on the roof felt like static, constant, low, relentless. I walked downstairs, made tea, and sat in the dark living room. The TV was off, but I could see the faint reflection of my face on the black screen, blurred split by shadow. Dad's voice echoed from the night before. No man wants a woman who just stays home. I whispered to the empty room. Then it's a good thing I built my own world inside one. The clock ticked toward midnight. I opened my laptop again. The glow lit my hands as I typed a new update to our investor network, Aurora Chain Capital Private Report new allocation of 12% into gold-backed digital assets. Market analysis suggests hybrid stability between blockchain liquidity and traditional reserve models. Integration with the SoFi platform continues. Projected valuation increase, 27% by Q4. Each line I wrote felt like a secret confession. The world saw blockchain as a gamble. I saw it in the mirror. Every transaction was an act of belief, every wallet a promise that people could choose trust without middlemen. My father's generation believed banks were safe because they had solid floors and vaults. Mine believed in math. At 2 a.m., a new email arrived from SoFi's project director, subject beta success confirmation phase 2 scheduled. Congratulations, Aurora Chain Capital team. Your metrics surpassed projection by 37%. The CEO will mention your results in the next interview. I read it twice, the irony making me smile. My father idolized that same CEO, the man who had just unknowingly praised his daughter's company. I opened a new tab, typed SoFi CEO, Anthony Noto interview replay, and let the video run quietly. His words echoed through the room. Blockchain and crypto are a supercycle technology just like AI. They're not just currencies. They're systems of trust. Systems of trust. I whispered the phrase again, slower this time. Somewhere upstairs, the floor creaked. My father probably heading to the kitchen for water. I closed the laptop just before he appeared in the doorway. "You're up late," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded, glancing at the screen. "I see you're still busy with that project of yours." I smiled softly. "Sometimes it leads exactly where you're meant to go." He frowned, not understanding, then poured himself water and left. When the footsteps faded, I reopened the laptop. The glow returned steady and blue, wrapping the room in quiet defiance. I stared at the Aurora logo pulsing on the screen and whispered, "Embers burn slowly, but they still burn." Outside, the rain kept falling, soft, endless, patient, like time itself, washing away the noise of old beliefs, while the new world quietly built itself in the dark. The world didn't notice when Aurora Chain Capital passed its first billion in managed assets. No headlines, no photos, just a number changing quietly on a screen one foggy Thursday morning. I sat at my desk, barefoot, sipping black coffee. While the sunlight broke weakly through the blinds, the irony made me smile. My father thought I was wasting my life staying home, yet from this same room I was quietly moving markets. Maya's message popped up on the corner of the screen. Maya SoFi confirmed the partnership. "We're officially listed as a preferred blockchain liquidity provider." Me, keep it off social media. The less noise, the better. Maya. "You really hate attention, huh?" Me. "It attracts questions. I prefer results." She sent a laughing emoji, but beneath it she understood. Aurora's growth wasn't luck. It was discipline, data-driven, relentless, and invisible. Every transaction, every token, every ledger line was part of a design that few could see, but everyone would eventually feel. That afternoon I took a walk through the neighborhood. The same streets I'd grown up on now felt smaller, quieter. Retired neighbors waved. A few asked, "So still job hunting?" I smiled and said yes, because it was easier than explaining I owned the algorithms behind their pension fund's crypto diversification portfolio. At the local diner, I ordered tea and opened my tablet. Aurora's analytics displayed rising traffic from Asia, Singapore, Seoul, Tokyo. The East was waking up to crypto, while the West was still laughing at it. I loved that. The quiet always moved before the crowd. That evening my father invited me to dinner again, just the two of us this time. It had been weeks since the "no man wants a woman who stays home" conversation. He seemed unusually calm, even cheerful, which made me cautious. The table was neatly set. Steak and mashed potatoes, his comfort food. He poured himself a glass of wine, looked across at me and said, "You know, Lena, I worry about you." I cut my steak slowly. "I know, Dad. I just don't understand how you spend all this time at home. Don't you get restless?" "I work." He raised an eyebrow. "Doing what, finance?" He chuckled. "Finance? You're not even licensed. You need real experience to work in finance." My throat tightened, but I kept my tone light. Maybe I just found another way in. There's no shortcut in that world. I worked 25 years at SoFi. I know how the system works. I know how systems evolve, I said. He didn't hear the difference. Or maybe he didn't want to. After dinner, I helped clear the plates. The conversation hung between us, unfinished but heavy. My mother poked her head in from the living room. "Your father's just proud of his work, sweetheart. You know how men are." "I know," I said quietly. "They like feeling certain." Upstairs, I opened my laptop again. The numbers glowed, soothing, undeniable. SoFi's new integration module displayed Aurora's metrics: liquidity, volatility, controlled trade completion speed. Green across every line. They'd never know that the algorithms they praised had been designed in this very room between unpaid bills and empty coffee cups. 2 days later, Maya and I joined a private SoFi investor call under pseudonyms. The CEO himself was there, speaking about blockchain adoption. "Digital assets are the next frontier of trust," he said. Our partner firms are helping shape a new financial ecosystem. I muted my microphone, glanced at Maya's username, M. Tron, systems analyst. She sent me a direct message. He's talking about us. I typed back, then let him. As the meeting went on, investors flooded the chat with questions. Someone asked, "Which blockchain partners are showing consistent results?" The CEO smiled slightly. "A fund called Aurora Chain Capital. They've built one of the most stable hybrid portfolios we've seen." My heart skipped once, not from pride, but from the surreal quiet of recognition that wasn't supposed to happen. For years, I'd built systems for other people to take credit for. Now, even when no one knew my name, my work was reshaping their idea of what was possible. That night, my brother Evan dropped by unexpectedly. He carried a bottle of whiskey and the smug energy of someone who thought he was the hero of every story. "Long time no see, sis." "Busy," I said, leaning against the counter. "Yeah, doing what?" He grinned. "Don't tell me you're still on that crypto nonsense." I smiled faintly. "Depends what you call nonsense." He laughed. "Bitcoin NFTs, all those pump and dump scams. It's a bubble waiting to burst." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it's evolution pretending to be a fad." He poured himself a drink, shaking his head. "You used to be smart. I don't get it. Why hide away in that little room when you could work for someone real? Because I'd rather build something real than work for someone pretending to." He blinked, then laughed again, louder, emptier. "You always had a comeback, didn't you?" "Not a comeback," I said. "Just data." He left after midnight, smelling of whiskey and self-assurance. I cleaned the glass he'd used, set it upside down to dry, and wondered how long people could mistake noise for success. A week later, Aurora's valuation doubled. Our investment in tokenized gold and stablecoin hybrids had exploded after a major market correction. We had predicted it, modeled it, and profited from it all without leaving our desks. Maya called that night voice breathless. "Lena, we just hit 2 billion AUM. 2 billion. I didn't react. Numbers were just echoes of decisions already made. She laughed. "You're impossible. Do you even realize what this means?" "I do," I said softly. "It means we're doing it right." Quietly. Later that evening, I found my father in the living room watching TV. A financial segment was running SoFi expands partnership with blockchain fund Aurora Chain Capital. He pointed at the screen. "See that? That's smart. Real innovation backed by people who know what they're doing. Not those amateurs online." I smiled. "Yeah, smart people." He nodded approvingly. The CEO said their risk management strategy was flawless. Imagine being part of something like that. I stood behind him, hands in my pockets. "Yeah," I whispered. "Imagine." The news anchor kept talking, showing charts and rising numbers, while my father leaned forward, absorbed. To him, Aurora Chain Capital was a symbol of progress he could finally respect. He just didn't know his daughter built it. That night, the moonlight spilled across my desk like a soft witness. I opened Aurora's admin panel one last time before bed. A notification blinked on the screen. "Congratulations, L. Harper founder. Recognition request pending." I hovered over the approve button, my finger trembling for a second. Then I clicked deny. No headlines, no interviews, no exposure, just the quiet hum of the world shifting beneath the surface, powered by unseen hands. I closed the laptop and leaned back, listening to the house creak in the night. Down the hall, my father's TV still played faintly, his voice muttering praise for the company he thought belonged to someone else. I smiled in the dark. The quiet rise had begun, and this time I didn't need anyone's permission to keep climbing. It was supposed to be another ordinary Sunday dinner, the kind that filled the house with polite conversation and familiar smells. My mother set the table, humming under her breath, while my father adjusted the TV volume so he could keep an eye on the evening news. Evan was already talking too loudly, bragging about a new client he'd landed. Everything looked the same, but something in the air had changed. This time I wasn't the one shrinking at the table. "Sophie's in the news again," Dad said, pointing at the TV. "Their CEO was on CNBC this morning talking about crypto expansion. Impressive man. Level-headed. Not like those tech dreamers." I watched the broadcast over his shoulder. On screen, the SoFi logo gleamed beside the words, Blockchain Partnership Expansion. My father leaned back in his chair, nodding. Now that's the future when real banks take control of this crypto nonsense. Evan snorted. Guess even the banks want a piece of the chaos. I smiled faintly. Maybe they just finally understood it's not chaos. It's evolution. Dad gave me that skeptical half-laugh I knew too well. Evolution, please. It's speculation dressed up in tech jargon. Real money still sits in vaults, not in the cloud. He didn't know that the vaults he trusted were already running on the algorithms I'd built. Dinner began quietly enough. My mother's lasagna steamed in the center of the table, filling the room with warmth. Dad talked about SoFi's stock price, about how the market needed discipline again. Evan threw in a few comments about gold prices, trying to sound informed. I just listened, cutting into my food, hearing phrases like liquidity issues, stable markets, digital risk, all things I'd built solutions for. Sophie's CEO said they're partnering with a firm called... My father squinted at the TV. What's the name? Aurora something. Evan chuckled. Aurora Chain Capital. Yeah, I saw that. Some mysterious fund. No one even knows who runs it. Dad nodded approvingly. Probably a group of seasoned analysts. People with real experience. I took a slow breath. The irony was almost unbearable. My fork hovered over my plate as the words sank in Aurora Chain Capital. My company. My name erased from the story, yet right there in front of them. My mother looked up from her plate, sensing the tension. It's nice to see young people doing something new. Maybe it's not all bad. Dad gave her a dismissive wave. We'll see how long it lasts. These things always crash eventually. He turned back to me. You see, Lena? That's what happens when people chase trends instead of working steady jobs. They get lucky for a bit, then lose it all. I looked at him, calm, steady. Maybe luck is just what people call it when they don't understand the work behind something. He frowned, confused by the calmness in my voice. You sound like one of those motivational podcasts. Stick to something real. I am, I said simply. The room grew quiet again, save for the clinking of silverware. My mother shifted in her seat, clearly hoping to steer the conversation elsewhere. So, Lena, she said softly, have you been out much lately? You should see your friends more. I've been busy. Still with that online project? Still. Dad sighed. You've been busy for years, and I haven't seen one tangible result. Not everything worth doing shows immediate results, I said. He chuckled. That's what people say right before they give up. Evan laughed. Don't take it personally, sis. You just weren't built for the business world. It's fine. Not everyone is. I set my fork down, my appetite gone. I'd spent years thinking silence was my shield, that not answering meant control. But that night, silence felt heavy, like a secret pressing against my ribs. You're right, I said finally, looking straight at Evan. Not everyone's built for the business world. Some people build the world the business runs on. His smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, picking up my fork again. Just thinking out loud. Later that night, after everyone had gone quiet, I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes. The TV still played faintly in the background, an anchor discussing SoFi's partnership with Aurora Chain Capital. The segment showed a sleek blue logo, my logo, flashing across the screen. Dad walked in, drying his hands with a towel. You're still up. Couldn't sleep. He nodded toward the TV. That's the company I was talking about. Aurora. They've got their act together. That's what happens when people work, not dream. I smiled faintly, my hands submerged in warm water. Yeah, work, not dream. He didn't catch the tone. Maybe you'll find something like that one day. A real team. I shut off the faucet. Maybe. When he went upstairs, I wiped my hands and sat down on the couch. The broadcast had switched to a financial analysis segment. A reporter said Aurora Chain Capital's liquidity algorithms have revolutionized SoFi's blockchain infrastructure. The firm's anonymous founder remains a mystery, but industry insiders call them a genius of quiet innovation. The words echoed through the room. Anonymous founder. Quiet innovation. Genius. For the first time, I felt the strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow that comes from being recognized and unseen all at once. The anchor kept talking, but I was somewhere else back in that first night when Dad's words had cut through the warmth of dinner. No man wants a woman who just stays home. He'd been wrong. I hadn't stayed home. I stayed awake. I stayed in the building. I'd stayed believing in something he couldn't yet see. Hours later, the house slept. The TV was off. The kitchen light glowed faintly, and I sat in the silence, my reflection barely visible in the glass of the dark window. The rain outside had started again, soft, rhythmic cleansing. I thought about what Maya once said, "Are you ever gonna enjoy winning?" Maybe this was what winning looked like. Not applause, not headlines, just knowing the world had shifted an inch closer to what you built. I finished the last of my tea, stood, and turned off the light. The faint reflection of the Aurora logo on my laptop screen flickered one last time before fading into black. Somewhere upstairs, my father was dreaming of a company he admired. He didn't know it belonged to the woman washing dishes in his kitchen. And for now, that was enough. The first message came at 5:14 a.m. I was still half asleep when the vibration of my phone jolted me awake. Maya, Lena. Wake up. We've got a problem. I sat up, heart already pounding. My laptop screen flickered to life, filling the room with cold light. There it was, a headline spreading across every major crypto feed, anonymous founder behind Aurora Chain Capital, believed to be a woman based in Oregon. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The article was short, vague, but the damage was done. The illusion of anonymity had cracked. No names yet, but too many breadcrumbs. The writer mentioned patterns in transaction times and localized login activity. Oregon. A woman. That was already too close. Maya called. They traced the SoFi integration API. It leaked metadata from our side. Someone sniffing IPs. Who could be an internal contractor? Or a journalist fishing for a name? Doesn't matter, people are connecting dots. Outside dawn was just beginning to paint the sky. The air felt heavier, like the quiet before a storm. By noon, the story had spread. Financial blogs ran with headlines that turned guesswork into near certainty. The mystery woman of blockchain. SoFi's secret partner, the hidden billionaire behind Aurora. It wasn't exposure yet, but it was movement. And movement meant risk. Maya and I met in the same cafe where we'd built half our plans. She slammed her laptop open. Someone from SoFi's PR team is trying to reach us. They want to confirm the founder's identity. I kept my tone steady. We say nothing. Aurora speaks only through results. Her fingers drummed the table. Lena, this isn't sustainable. The higher we climb, the harder it is to hide. I looked at her over the rim of my coffee cup. Maybe that's the price of building something that works too well. She sighed. Or maybe it's the price of wanting to control the story. That evening I got home to find my father in his armchair, eyes glued to the news. The anchor's voice carried across the room. Speculation continues around the anonymous founder of Aurora Chain Capital, the fund currently partnered with SoFi Bank. Sources suggest the founder is a female financial strategist working remotely from Oregon. He turned the volume down and looked at me. Funny, isn't it? A woman in Oregon running a billion-dollar fund. Sounds like fiction. I forced a smile. Maybe not, he chuckled. No offense, Lena, but that world isn't kind to dreamers. Whoever she is, she won't last long once they find her. I didn't answer. He went on, oblivious. That's the problem with crypto. No accountability. Just shadows moving money. My hands tightened around the edge of my chair. Sometimes shadows build more than light ever did, I said quietly. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, standing, just thinking out loud. But my voice shook. Later that night, I sat in the dark with my laptop open, scrolling through the growing storm. Every post, every thread, every theory chipped away at the boundary between my public silence and private truth. A new message flashed on screen. Maya SoFi Compliance just flagged our data center activity. They want a call tomorrow. You can't avoid it this time. Me fine. Schedule it. But under the pseudonym, not my name. Maya Lena. I think your father's SoFi account triggered the trace. His retirement data was accessed during the integration. They're connecting him to you. I froze. The irony cut sharp. The same man who mocked everything I built had unknowingly been my weak link. At 2 a.m., the house was silent. I walked into the kitchen, the light from the refrigerator spilling across the tile. My father's tablet sat on the counter screen, still open on the SoFi dashboard. He'd been checking his accounts again. I stared at his reflection on the dark glass door, ghostly unaware. My hand hovered over the screen, tempted to log in and wipe every trace that tied us together. But that would raise more suspicion. I closed the tablet instead and whispered, "Please, Dad, stay out of this." The next day, during the SoFi compliance call, Maya handled the introductions. The executive on the other end had a clipped voice, polite but probing. "We've detected irregular API activity from your integration partner," he said. "Our legal department requires identity verification of Aurora's founder." Maya replied smoothly, "We operate as a collective entity. No individual holds sole ownership. Our charter is decentralized. That won't satisfy compliance, Ms. Tran." "I'm afraid it will have to," I said, finally unmuting my mic. There was a pause. "And you are consultant." The silence that followed was cold, suspicious. Then he sighed. "Understood. But understand this, if the press uncovers your founder's identity before we confirm it internally, SoFi will distance itself immediately." The call ended. Maya leaned back in her chair, exhaling hard. That was close. I nodded. Too close. By that evening, the first journalist had found my email. Subject inquiry for comment, Aurora Chain Capital. Ms. Harper, several sources have suggested you may be connected to Aurora Chain Capital, currently in partnership with SoFi. Would you like to confirm or deny? My finger hovered over the delete key. Instead, I typed one line, "Aurora belongs to everyone who believes in rebuilding trust. Names don't matter." Then I hit send and closed my laptop. When I walked downstairs, my father was waiting by the window holding a printout of the article. His face was pale. "Lena," he said slowly, "why does this woman they're describing sound like you?" I forced a laugh. "Because apparently I have competition." He didn't smile. "You're not mixed up in this, are you?" I met his eyes. "Would it change how you see me if I were—" He hesitated. "It would make me worry." I stepped closer, my voice calm but steady. "You've been worrying about the wrong things, Dad." He opened his mouth to respond but stopped. I could see it, the first flicker of doubt, the realization that maybe he didn't know everything after all. That night I lay awake listening to the rain hit the window. The leak had shifted something irreversibly. There was no going back to silence. In the glow of my laptop, I drafted a private memo to Maya. If exposure is coming, let it come. But on our terms. We didn't build Aurora to hide. We built it to prove that belief can be architecture, and that even in the noise, quiet truth survives. I hit save, closed the screen, and leaned back. The world was beginning to see me. And for the first time, I wasn't entirely sure whether that felt like victory or warning. The morning felt heavier than usual, the kind of gray that seeps through the windows before the sun decides whether to rise. I hadn't slept. Neither had my phone. Notifications still poured in, articles, tweets, speculation. My name wasn't public yet, but it was close enough that every sentence about the mysterious woman behind Aurora sounded like a whisper pointed at me. When I finally walked downstairs, my father was already sitting at the kitchen table, coffee mug in one hand, the newspaper in the other. His reading glasses sat low on his nose. The headline was impossible to miss: Aurora founder rumored to have family ties to former SoFi executive. He didn't look up. "You want to tell me what this is about?" I stood by the doorway, the distance between us feeling like miles. "It's just noise, Dad." He folded the paper carefully, like he needed to control at least one thing in the chaos. "It's not noise when people start calling my old office asking questions. They think my daughter's running some billion-dollar crypto scheme." "Scheme," I repeated quietly. You know what I mean, he said, voice sharp. You've been hiding something, haven't you? The silence stretched long enough for him to answer his own question. He pushed back from the table. It's true, isn't it? I met his eyes. Yes. He froze as if the word itself had weight. You're behind that company, I built it. The color drained from his face. You? Lena? Do you have any idea what you've done? You can't just play with that kind of money. You're not licensed. You're not qualified. I finished for him. Not certified by your world standards. No. But I didn't need permission to build a system that worked. He stared at me, searching for something to grab onto. You lied. I protected what I was building. That's the same thing. I took a breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. You always said stability mattered most. That people needed trust. That's what I built, trust without the middlemen. He laughed bitterly. You built a fantasy. People don't trust code. They trust banks. They trust what keeps them safe, I said. And banks stopped doing that a long time ago. He turned away, pacing near the sink. The morning light hit his gray hair, softening him for a second. You think you're better than the system? That's arrogance, Lena. No, I said. That's vision. He slammed his mug down hard enough to make the counter shake. Vision doesn't pay for consequences. I didn't flinch. Neither does fear. That stopped him. For a moment, all I could hear was the ticking of the kitchen clock, the same rhythm that had measured every argument we'd ever had. You sound just like your mother when she talks about hope, he said finally. But at least she knows when to stop believing in impossible things. I'm not asking you to believe, I said. I'm asking you to see. He shook his head. I see a daughter gambling with shadows. I smiled faintly. And I see a man who spent his life guarding a vault, never realizing the key was already digital. The conversation ended without ending. He walked out to the porch, the door slamming behind him. I stood there, feeling the echoes settle like dust. Upstairs, my laptop chimed. Maya had sent a message. Maya. The markets are reacting to the leak. Some investors are pulling out. We might have to make a statement. Me. No statements, not yet. Maya SoFi wants reassurance. Their compliance team's panicking. Me. Tell them the system speaks for itself. Aurora hasn't lost a cent. Still, the unease clung to me. For the first time, I felt the weight of being visible. That afternoon, my father knocked on my office door. The hesitation in that sound was almost unfamiliar. He stepped in, eyes, tired, voice softer. Show me. I blinked. What, your company? The thing you built. Show me what all this is. I hesitated, then turned the screen toward him. The dashboard of Aurora lit the room, graphs in motion. Liquidity pools, SoFi partnership, analytics, blockchain transaction flows running in real time. He leaned closer, squinting. This is you, yes. He studied the graphs in silence, watching the values tick upward. And people trust this. They trust consistency. They trust the results. He rubbed his chin. SoFi's logo is here. That means they're using our infrastructure. When people trade, we make it safer. He exhaled, shaking his head. It's impressive. Then, after a pause, but it's still dangerous. Everything that changes the world, as I said. He didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. His reflection flickered on the screen beside mine. 2 generations, both shaped by money, both searching for meaning in different languages. That night I found him sitting outside, staring at the fading light. The paper was beside him again, folded unread. I worked my whole life trying to protect people from losing what they earned, he said, without looking at me. And now my daughter's building something I can't even explain. Maybe it's not about protecting anymore, I said. Maybe it's about teaching people to protect themselves. He gave a small, almost defeated laugh. You think I don't want to believe in you? I think you're afraid to. The words landed gently but truthfully. He turned, eyes wet with something between anger and pride. You're still my little girl who stayed home. I smiled. And you're still the man who taught me to double-check the math. For the first time in years, he laughed, a quiet, broken sound that felt almost like healing. The next morning, I woke to a notification from Maya. Maya. The SoFi CEO wants a private call with us. They know. I looked out the window. My father was in the garden trimming the hedges, pretending the world hadn't shifted overnight. The air was calm, deceptive, like the stillness before an earthquake. I typed my reply. Set it up. Before I could close the laptop, another notification appeared. Aurora, trending #1 female founder revealed. My chest tightened, but not from fear. When I stepped outside, my father looked up from the garden. He was holding his phone, eyes wide. "Lena," I met his gaze. "I know." He didn't speak for a long time. "Then finally you built this, yes." He nodded slowly, the lines around his mouth softening. "Then maybe it's time I stopped underestimating what can be built at home." The wind stirred the leaves. For once, neither of us filled the silence. The confrontation was over. The understanding had begun. It started with a single red candle. At 3:02 a.m., Bitcoin dropped 7% in 5 minutes. By sunrise, the fall had turned into a landslide. Ethereum, Solana, the stablecoins, everyone swore were safe. All of them bled across my screen in shades of red that looked like open wounds. Aurora's dashboard flashed warnings faster than I could read them. "Maya, we're losing liquidity in Pool B. The bots are panicking. Me freeze automatic withdrawals. Lock it until we stabilize." "Maya, that'll piss people off." Me better angry than bankrupt. Outside, the storm matched the one on my screen. Rain battered the windows, wind scraping at the glass like claws. I hadn't slept in 2 days, and now it didn't matter. Adrenaline had replaced sleep. By 8 o'clock, financial media called it the crypto collapse of the quarter. SoFi's executives demanded an emergency call. The same networks that once praised the genius of Aurora's algorithms were now asking whether we'd triggered the fall ourselves. The video meeting was chaos. Half a dozen SoFi faces filled the screen, all speaking at once. "Your risk protocols failed. We need a statement immediately. Our CEO is under pressure. Do you understand the liability here?" Maya tried to answer, but they kept cutting her off. I was unmuted. "Stop talking," I said quietly. They froze. "This isn't a failure. It's a correction. The system's doing what it was designed to do, stabilize liquidity, not save speculators." One executive frowned. "You don't sound very concerned, Ms. Harper." "I'm concerned about people learning the wrong lesson," I said. "They think volatility is evil. It's not. It's feedback." The CEO, Anthony Noto, appeared on screen at last, calm but sharp-eyed. "Your fund is exposed. You've built something powerful, but if you can't manage public confidence, it won't matter how sound your math is." "I understand," I said. "Then let me explain it directly to them." He tilted his head. "You mean publicly? Yes. If the world's going to burn, they should at least see who's holding the water." When the call ended, Maya stared at me. "You're serious. You're going to show your face." "They already have my name," I said. "Might as well give them my voice." "Lena, this isn't just a statement, it's exposure. Once you go live, there's no going back to anonymity." I looked at the flickering red graphs on the screen. Maybe anonymity isn't the point anymore. By the time the live stream began, the storm outside had turned violent. Lightning flickered behind me as if the universe had decided to set the stage. Over 200,000 people tuned in within the first 5 minutes. I sat in front of the camera. No makeup, no filters. Just a woman who'd built something real and refused to apologize for it. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Lena Harper. Some of you know me as the founder of Aurora Chain Capital. Most of you don't know me at all, and that's fine. I never built Aurora for fame. I built it for function." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "The market crash you're seeing today isn't a flaw of crypto. It's a reflection of us, our fear, our greed, our inability to hold steady when the world trembles. Aurora isn't about chasing profits. It's about learning to stand still in the storm." Comments flooded the screen. Some are supportive, some are furious, some are calling me a fraud. I went on. "You can lose your money in any system. What matters is whether the system teaches you something before it does. Blockchain isn't chaos. It's the first honest mirror finance has ever had. It shows us exactly what we are when no one's watching. The rain thundered louder. My reflection shimmered faintly on the laptop screen, split by streaks of water on the window behind it. "I'm not here to defend myself," I said softly. "I'm here to remind you that faith without understanding isn't faith, it's dependency. If you trusted me because you thought I was invisible, I'm telling you now, I'm not. I'm just a woman who decided not to wait for permission to build something that works." When I finished, there was no applause, only silence. Then slowly messages started appearing. Respect. Finally a real person. Maybe we needed this crash. When the stream ended, I sat still for a long time. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, more from release. Maya called immediately. That was insane. It was necessary. You realize you just went viral, right? Half the world's calling you brave. The other half's calling you reckless. I smiled. Then we did it right. She laughed softly. Your dad's watching. CNN just ran in your face. My breath caught. What did he say? She hesitated. He didn't say anything. He just stood up. When I went downstairs, he was in the living room, standing in front of the TV. My face filled the screen, frozen mid-sentence. For the first time in years, his expression wasn't one of disapproval, it was disbelief cracked open by awe. I stopped at the doorway. Dad. He turned slowly, voice quiet. You this, how long? Since before you thought I'd given up. He ran a hand over his face as if trying to wipe away decades of certainty. You did all this from this house? Yes. He looked back at the screen where the anchor was calling me the woman redefining digital trust. Finally he whispered, I was wrong. The words landed like absolution. I stepped closer. You weren't wrong about everything. You just stopped believing the world could evolve. He nodded slowly. Maybe I stopped believing I could. Outside thunder rolled again, but it sounded softer now, like something breaking apart so new light could get through. That night I walked out onto the porch. The rain had calmed to a steady drizzle. The air smelled clean, almost new. My phone buzzed with messages, investors, journalists, strangers from around the world. I ignored them all. Maya sent one last text. Congratulations, Aurora is stabilizing. The market's recovering. I typed back, told you, storms don't destroy, they reveal structure. Then I put the phone away and looked at the horizon. For the first time, I wasn't just the woman who stayed home. I was the woman who'd faced the storm and stayed standing. And somewhere behind me, through the half-open door, I heard my father's voice, low, steady, proud. My daughter, he said softly, the one the world thought was invisible. The silence after fame is louder than the noise that came before it. The morning after the live stream, my inbox overflowed requests for interviews, speaking engagements, partnerships, sponsorships. People who once dismissed me as a stay-at-home dreamer now called me visionary icon revolutionary. I scrolled through the messages without answering any. Fame wasn't a reward. It was surveillance wearing makeup. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still buzzed. News trucks lined the street outside my neighborhood, cameras angled toward my gate. Neighbors who never bothered to say hello now waved too eagerly, as if proximity to me might turn into luck. I closed the curtains and let the light fall away. Maya called first. You've gone global, she said. Aurora's numbers doubled overnight. SoFi's stock rebounded, investors are back in. You saved the market, Lena. Did I asked quietly. She hesitated. What's wrong? I turned to the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't who I remembered, same features, but harder around the edges, eyes too sharp, smile too trained. Maybe I didn't save anything. Maybe I just proved that people only trust what's visible long enough to worship it and then destroy it again. Maya sighed. You always do this. You build the miracle, then you hate the applause. I don't hate it, I said. I just know it's not real. By noon, my father came to find me. He stood in the doorway of my office, phone in hand, the faintest trace of pride still clinging to his posture. They're replaying your speech on CNBC, he said. You sound confident. Confidence is a polite word for terrifying people, I said. He smiled a little. You terrified them into believing you. I didn't want belief, I said. I wanted to understand. He crossed the room, placing the phone on my desk. On the screen, a commentator was analyzing my every sentence. She represents a new era of decentralized ethics, he said. Part rebel, part reformer. My father chuckled. They're calling you the crypto reformer. It has a nice ring to it. Titles don't interest me, I said. Then what does? I thought for a moment. Silence. He frowned. You finally get the world's attention and you want silence. Yes, I said. Because silence is when things are built. Noise is just applause for unfinished work. He studied me, eyes softening. You're still that girl from the dinner table, aren't you? The one who listened more than she spoke. Maybe, I said, but now they all hear the quiet, too. That evening, I agreed to one interview, just one, with a journalist from a major network. We met in a minimalist studio, all light and glass. The producer called it authentic simplicity, but it still smelled like staged air. The interviewer smiled as the cameras rolled. Lena, people are calling you the voice of a new financial movement. How does it feel to go from obscurity to influence overnight? It doesn't feel like anything, I said. Influence isn't ownership. It's just borrowed attention. She tilted her head. And what do you plan to do with that attention? Redirect it, I said, towards something that lasts longer than me. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile people give when they don't fully understand. You're being modest. No, I said softly. I'm being precise. The interview aired the next morning. They cut half of what I said and added dramatic music under the rest. By the time it hit social media, I'd become a symbol I didn't recognize, the billionaire who built hope, the woman who outsmarted Wall Street, the daughter who redefined value. Each headline twisted my story until it didn't belong to me anymore. A week later, I attended a SoFi board dinner. It was held at a glass tower downtown, the kind of place where conversation clinks like cutlery. Everyone congratulated me, toasted me, and quoted me back to myself. When the SoFi CEO raised his glass, he said, "To Lena Harper, who proved that trust doesn't need permission." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. I smiled, but my hands were shaking under the table. When it ended, I slipped out to the balcony, away from the crowd. Below, the city glittered like a circuit board, alive and mechanical. Maya joined me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. You did it, she said. I shook my head. No, we survived. That's not the same thing. You're too poetic for your own good. I'm just tired. Then rest, she said gently. I can't. Why not? Because I'm afraid the silence won't recognize me anymore. She didn't answer. We stood there watching the lights blink in the distance. Somewhere a plane crossed the sky, its red beacon fading into the clouds. When I returned home that night, the house was quiet. My father had left a note on the kitchen table. Proud of you. Don't lose yourself in their noise. I ran my fingers over the ink. His handwriting was uneven, but the message was steady. Upstairs, I opened my laptop. The Aurora dashboard looked different now, smoother, sleeker, branded with the new SoFi Aurora integration logo. The clean perfection of it made me uneasy. It didn't feel like mine anymore. I stared at the cursor blinking on the screen. So much power, so much access. And yet all I wanted was stillness. I opened a blank document and typed, "Success without peace is just another kind of failure." Then I closed the window, shut the laptop, and turned off the light. In the darkness, I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, the rhythm of everything I'd built pulsing beyond my walls. For the first time, it felt distant, like something that had already outgrown me. I lay back, eyes open, and whispered into the quiet, "Let it live without me." Outside, the moonlight spread across my desk, glinting off the silver edges of the Aurora logo, soft, beautiful, and cold. The world was still watching, still applauding, still hungry for the next headline. But inside this small, silent house, the woman who once stayed home finally understood there's a difference between being seen and being free. The first knock came just before noon. It wasn't the sharp, impatient kind that came from reporters or delivery people. It was steady, almost careful, as if the person on the other side was trying not to disturb something fragile. When I opened the door, a man stood there in a dark gray suit, the kind of suit that didn't draw attention but whispered authority. Behind him, a black sedan idled quietly by the curb. "Ms. Harper?" he asked. "Yes." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a sleek, matte black ID wallet. "Special Agent Ramirez, Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask you a few questions about Aurora Chain Capital." I froze, though my expression didn't show it. "You could have emailed." He smiled politely. "You're a hard woman to reach, and we thought this might be better discussed in person." Behind him, another agent, a woman with calm, assessing eyes, waited silently. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." The living room suddenly felt too small for 3 people. Ramirez took a seat on the couch, setting down a thin tablet. The female agent stood by the window, scanning the room like it might confess something. Ms. Harper Ramirez began. "Aurora's growth has been extraordinary. Billions in assets, minimal staff, fully decentralized infrastructure." "That's accurate." "Almost too accurate," he said mildly. "Some regulators are concerned your platform's autonomy might exceed what's legally manageable." I folded my arms. Meaning, he said, your system functions without clear jurisdiction. If something goes wrong, there's no one to hold accountable. Something has gone wrong. Not yet. He tapped the tablet, showing transaction flows on a map, lines of light crossing continents. "But you've moved more digital assets in 6 months than some national banks. You understand why that might raise eyebrows." I met his gaze. "We built transparency into every transaction. Every ledger entry is public. The system is safer than any traditional bank." "That may be true technically," he said, "but not emotionally. People don't like what they can't control." I smiled faintly. "And you don't like what you can't subpoena." The female agent turned from the window. "You're confident, Ms. Harper." "I'm consistent," I said. They stayed for nearly an hour asking questions about SoFi's integration, about the blockchain audits, about investor protections. I answered each with precision. When they finally stood, Ramirez looked around the house at the framed photo of my parents, the quiet simplicity of the room. "You live simply for someone with that kind of wealth," he said. "I value peace more than proof," I replied. He nodded. "Keep it that way. The higher you rise, the more people want to pull you down. Story of every woman who built something her own way." He paused at the door. "You remind me of someone I once investigated, a tech founder who thought she could change the system. What happened to her? She did. But it cost her everything." When they left, the sound of the car faded slowly down the street. I stood in the doorway until it was gone, the air suddenly feeling heavier. By evening, the news had shifted tone again. The headlines no longer praised. "Federal interest in Aurora is innovation, outpacing regulation, anonymous sources suggest audit pending." The cycle had turned admiration to suspicion, applause to scrutiny. Maya called her voice tight. "We knew this might happen. You poked too many institutions at once." "I didn't poke," I said. "I exposed an imbalance. The system doesn't like mirrors." "Well, they're aiming their lights at you now," she warned. "We need to prepare a statement before this becomes a witch hunt." "No," I said. "Let them look. The truth doesn't fear exposure." "Neither did I," she whispered, "until I saw what exposure does to the brave." Later that night, my father found me on the porch, sitting in the dark. The air smelled like wet cedar after a light rain. He handed me a mug of coffee, warm against my palms. "Heard about the agents," he said. "News travels fast." He nodded. "They came to my office, too. Asked about you. About our family." My grip tightened around the mug. "What did you say? That my daughter built something honest?" I looked at him, startled. "You said that?" He smiled, weary but proud. "You've done more from this house than I did in 40 years behind a desk. They can't understand that, so they'll try to discredit it. but they can't touch what's real. I swallowed hard. I used to think you'd never say that. I used to think I'd never need to. We sat in silence, watching the night deepen. Somewhere far away, thunder murmured, gentle this time, like a warning rather than a threat. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. They're not just investigating. They're trying to take control of the chain. Watch your network. Someone's selling access. No name. No trace. Just that. I stared at it for a long time, the glow of the screen lighting my face. Then I turned to my father. "Dad." I said quietly, "The storm isn't over." He looked out into the dark yard where the streetlights flickered like weak stars. "Then you do what you've always done," he said. "You build something that can stand through it." I nodded slowly, already feeling the shift inside me, the same calm I'd felt before every turning point in my life. The world might investigate, doubt, or destroy, but I was done defending what I'd built. Next time I will protect it. It started with a single flicker on my screen, barely noticeable, like static. Then another. Then a full system alert. Unauthorized activity detected. For 3 seconds I froze, watching the red warning pulse across Aurora's dashboard like a heartbeat gone rogue. Maya. I called, dialing before I could think. "I see it," she said before I spoke. "They're inside. How, I don't know. It's not external, it's internal routing. Someone's mirroring admin access." That sentence hit like ice. Internal meant betrayal. "Lock down Tier 1 nodes," I said. "Kill all external transactions. That'll spook investors. Better panic than collapse." The screen flashed again, wallet movements, rapid coordinated. It wasn't a hack. It was an extraction. Whoever it was knew exactly where to dig. An hour later, the house was dark except for the light from my monitors. The soft hum of fans filled the silence like shallow breathing. I moved from one screen to the next, tracing paths, setting traps, cutting off leaks. The numbers stabilized, but the damage was done. Millions had shifted in under 10 minutes. Then I found an access key. Not mine, not Maya's. A ghost signature connected through a dormant partner account one SoFi had created months ago during our integration tests. "They're using the old Sandbox API," I said. Maya swore. "SoFi's servers, or someone pretending to be them." "Lena," her voice lowered. "What if this isn't just a hack?" The question hung between us. We both knew the answer. The next morning, my father found me still at my desk, eyes red, coffee cold. "You haven't slept," he said. "Neither has the system." He frowned, glancing at the screens filled with scrolling code. "Is it serious?" "It's contained," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. "Someone breached the chain. They knew our architecture too well to be outsiders. Competitors or regulators. Same difference." He walked closer, resting a hand on the back of my chair. "You always said transparency was your shield." "It was," I murmured, "until someone learned how to weaponize it." By noon, the markets were trembling again. Articles popped up faster than I could refresh. Aurora leak. Raises questions about system security. SoFi silent, amidst internal breach allegations. Every headline twisted the knife a little deeper. Maya called. "The board wants to issue a joint statement. They're blaming an external cyber attack." "It wasn't external," I said flatly. "I know, but it's better optics. I'm not here for optics." "Then what are you here for, Lena?" "Because if you keep telling the truth, they'll make sure you're the only one blamed for it." I didn't answer. The sound of rain started again, outside, soft, rhythmic, steady. At 4:17 p.m., an encrypted message appeared in my inbox. No subject, no signature, just one line. "You built the system to protect people. Don't let them turn it into gold for themselves." Attached was a file log showing exactly where the breach originated. SoFi's compliance network. The same department that had praised Aurora for redefining decentralized trust. My breath caught. I forwarded the evidence to Maya. "Holy hell," she said after reading it. They were siphoning through the integration node. Testing liquidity control, they'll call it. And if you expose them, they'll deny it. Then what are we supposed to do? I looked at the rain streaking the window, the city lights blurred behind it. We rebuild. But this time, without permission. That night I met with my father on the porch. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy with the smell of wet wood and earth. He sat beside me quietly before speaking. "You look like your mother when she's decided something irreversible." "I might have," I said. He nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" "Separate Aurora from SoFi. Burn the connection. Take it fully decentralized." His brow furrowed. "You'll lose protection. You'll lose their backing. Then I lose the leash too." He studied me. The old tension between us softened now by something closer to pride. "You know, when I said no man wants a woman who stays home, I didn't mean I know what you meant," I interrupted gently. "You meant safety." "But safety was never my home." He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Then build your new one. Just make sure it's strong enough to stand when they come again." By midnight, I was back at my desk, fingers flying over the keyboard. Maya watched through the shared screen as I rerouted core servers, rekeyed ownership signatures, and locked the infrastructure under a new autonomous protocol, one that no corporation, no regulator, and no thief could touch. When it was done, I leaned back exhausted. "It's over," she whispered. "No," I said. "It's just beginning." The final alert faded from the dashboard. The Aurora symbol pulsed once, then steadied a quiet heartbeat alive again, untethered. Outside, the clouds broke open, revealing a thin stripe of dawn along the horizon. I thought of my father asleep down the hall, unaware that his daughter had just declared silent war against the system he'd once served. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. They could investigate, accuse, and rewrite headlines. But Aurora belonged to no one now. Not SoFi, not Wall Street, not even me. It belonged to the future. The house was silent again, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort, it exposes. Outside, the world was spinning with headlines, speculation, and outrage. Inside, I sat on the floor of my office, the screen still glowing faintly from the night before. Aurora was gone alive, yes, but no longer mine. The moment I released the final command, I thought I'd feel peace. What I felt instead was absence. For the first time in years, I had no dashboard to check, no market to monitor, no algorithm whispering like a heartbeat in the background. Just me, and the echo of everything I'd built leaving my hands. Maya's message blinked on my phone system stable. "Ownership distributed." "You did it." I didn't reply. What could I say? Doing it had never been the goal. Understanding it had been, and I wasn't sure I did anymore. I spent that morning walking aimlessly through the house. My father's old vinyl record still sat by the window untouched since the day Aurora went live. I pulled one out, Miles Davis kind of blue. The static before the first note crackled through the room. That sound, the imperfection before the music, felt truer than any algorithm I'd ever written. Dad appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, wearing the same flannel shirt he'd worn for decades. "You're playing jazz," he said with a half smile. "That means you're thinking too much." "Maybe I'm trying not to," I said. He sat across from me. "Maya called. Said you cut the cord completely." "I had to," I said. "It was the only way to keep it pure." He nodded, slow and thoughtful. "You know, your mother used to say purity's just perfection trying too hard. Maybe sometimes it's okay to let the world touch what you build." I looked at him. "You think I made a mistake?" He shook his head. "I think you made history. And history never feels clean when you're standing in it." Later I walked outside, barefoot, the grass still damp from last night's rain. The air smelled of earth and renewal. For months, I'd lived inside numbers and screens, forgetting what real things felt like. The world had called me a rebel, a criminal, a savior. But right then, I was just a woman standing in her backyard wondering what to do with silence. The question came quietly. Who are you when the fight ends? I didn't have an answer. In the afternoon, Maya showed up unannounced. She didn't knock, just walked in holding 2 coffees and a laptop. You've seen the news, she asked. I've stopped watching. You're the front page of every major outlet. Again. Only this time it's not a witch hunt, it's awe. They're calling you the first person to dethrone a system without violence. I almost laughed. They always rewrite the story to make it easier to swallow. Let them, she said. You don't need to fight anymore. I sat down on the couch. That's the problem, Maya. I don't know how not to. She handed me the coffee. Then learn. Let the world move without you for once. I can't, I said softly. What if it collapses again? She smiled, small and knowing. Then it does. And someone else rebuilds it. That's the point. You didn't build a throne, Lena. You built a bridge. Her words landed somewhere deep where fear had been nesting. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked out to the porch where the world felt wide again. My father had left the light on a silent invitation to sit. He joined me minutes later, bringing a blanket and 2 glasses of wine. Do you miss it? He asked. Every second, I said. But I don't want it back. That's how you know it's real, he said. When you can let something live without needing to own it. I watched the stars, their stillness more humbling than any chart of data. It feels strange, though, I admitted. I fought so hard for something I'll never touch again. He nodded. That's legacy, not loss. A breeze passed, lifting the hair from my shoulders. Somewhere in the distance I could hear the faint hum of the city life moving forward unbothered by my absence. It was both terrifying and beautiful. Dad, I said quietly. Do you think I was wrong to go so far? He thought for a long moment before answering. You didn't go too far. You just didn't stop where others were comfortable. That sentence settled like the truth. The kind that doesn't comfort but clears the air. When he went inside, I stayed. The stars above me seemed endless, like tiny nodes in the night sky, connected, luminous, untouchable. I imagined Aurora mirrored there, a constellation built not from code, but courage. And maybe that was the real reckoning, not with governments or systems, but with myself. To understand that control had never been freedom and surrender didn't mean defeat. I whispered to the night, almost without realizing, you're free now. I wasn't sure if I meant Aurora or me. Maybe both. The wind shifted again, cool and clean, carrying the scent of rain and beginnings. For the first time since it all began, I let the silence stay. And it didn't hurt anymore. The room smelled like cold coffee and tension. Rows of cameras lined the walls, each one blinking red like unblinking eyes. The Senate hearing had been scheduled for 9:00 a.m., but the room had been full since dawn. My name, Lena Harper, flashed across every major network banner in bold type, the woman who defied Wall Street. I sat at the long table facing the committee, a microphone inches from my mouth, the weight of every headline pressing against my spine. My father was somewhere in the audience behind me. I hadn't turned to look. If I did, I might not stay composed. The chairman adjusted his glasses. Ms. Harper, you stand accused of violating multiple sections of the Financial Stability and Data Sovereignty Acts. Do you deny that Aurora Chain Capital operated outside government oversight? No, Senator, I said calmly. Aurora wasn't built to evade oversight. It was built to eliminate the need for it. A murmur rippled through the room. The chairman leaned forward. You mean to tell this committee you believe the government is unnecessary in financial regulation? I believe in transparency, I said. And transparency doesn't require gatekeepers. Another senator, older and angrier, cut in. Your platform moved billions of dollars in under 24 hours without federal approval. You destabilized international markets. With respect, Senator, I said, markets were never stable. I didn't break them. I exposed them. A few people behind me gasped softly. Someone from the press scribbled frantically. The senator slammed his pen on the table. You talk like you're saving people, but you built a system that answers to no one. That's not innovation. That's anarchy. No, sir, I said. It's equality. The chairman's gavel struck wood once. Order. My voice stayed steady. Aurora wasn't about taking power. It was about returning it. Every transaction, every decision recorded on an open blockchain for all to see. You call that dangerous? I call it accountability. The questioning dragged on for hours. They asked about SoFi, about the integration leak, about the so-called Operation Reset. I told them the truth. I didn't delete records, I didn't hide profits, and I didn't steal. What I did was harder to forgive. I made control obsolete. At one point, a senator asked, "Do you understand how many traditional banks may collapse because of you?" "Yes," I said. "And I also understand how many lives were already collapsing while those banks were still standing." He leaned back, shaking his head. "You sound like a revolutionary." I met his gaze. "Maybe you've just forgotten what reform sounds like." During a recess, Maya found me in the hallway. She looked exhausted but proud. "You're trending again," she whispered. "Lena, speak." I half smiled. "Let them tweet. I'm not here to trend." "Then why are you here?" she asked quietly. "To make the record permanent," I said. "Even if they bury it, history won't be forgotten." Before she could reply, a security guard called my name. It was time to return. When I stepped back into the hearing room, the energy had changed. Someone had leaked a new report projected on the large screen behind the senators. Independent audit confirms no missing funds in Aurora network. Whispers surged through the room like electricity. The chairman's brow furrowed. "Ms. Harper, were you aware this audit existed?" "I commissioned it 3 weeks ago," I said. "Before you summoned me." The old senator sneered. "And you expected us to believe it's credible." "It was conducted by your own oversight division," I said. "Apparently, they finished before your accusations did." The chairman shuffled papers, clearly rattled. "So you're saying Aurora remains financially intact?" "More than intact," I said. "It's thriving. Because while this committee argues about control, people are using it. Paying bills, funding educations, rebuilding businesses. They're not asking for permission anymore. They're participating." The silence that followed was almost reverent. After the session adjourned, reporters swarmed like a tide. Flashbulbs popped, voices overlapped, microphones thrust toward my face. "Ms. Harper, are you planning to relaunch Aurora publicly? Do you consider yourself a political figure now? Are you afraid of being arrested?" I stopped at the steps outside the Capitol, the sunlight cutting through a line of clouds. "I'm not afraid of the consequences," I said, raising my voice enough for the microphones. "I'm afraid of stagnation. And I think that's what terrifies everyone here, the idea that power can shift peacefully without permission." The crowd erupted with questions, but I was already walking down the stairs. Maya was waiting near the car. My father stood beside her, his face unreadable until I was close enough to see the pride in his eyes. "You didn't flinch," he said. "I couldn't," I replied. "They were waiting for that." He nodded, handing me a folded newspaper. On the front page above the crease, my photo appeared beneath a new headline, "From Housewife to History, the Woman Who Made the System Blink." I laughed softly. "They always rewrite the story to make it palatable." "Let them," he said. "You already wrote the real one." That night, I watched the news alone. The anchors argued about legality, morality, economics. None of them talked about freedom. But I didn't need them to. The people already understood. Aurora's servers, now fully autonomous, had processed over 2 million new transactions in the past 12 hours. Maya texted, "It's spreading faster than they can regulate." I replied, "Good. It was never meant to be owned." As the clock ticked past midnight, I walked outside. The night was quiet, the stars clearer than they'd been in weeks. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself since the beginning peace. My father's words from earlier echoed in my mind. "You didn't flinch." Maybe that was the real victory, not the hearing, not the audit, not the movement. Just the refusal to bow when the world demanded submission. I looked up at the sky, imagining Aurora's nodes, flickering across continents like constellations, each one alive, connected, unstoppable. And for the first time, I let myself smile. The system had blinked, and I was still standing. The morning after everything ended didn't feel like an ending at all. It felt like space-wide, unclaimed, impossibly quiet. For months, my days had been filled with noise, the hum of servers, the sharp clicks of keys, the drone of voices asking, accusing, debating. Now there was only birdsong outside and the faint rustle of wind against the windows. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the pale light spread across the trees. For months my life had been accelerating code confrontation chaos. But now there was something quieter. Not victory, just clarity. Maya called her voice soft for once. "It's done," she said. The government backed off. The Senate archived the inquiry. Aurora's no longer under investigation. I closed my eyes, exhaling. And the network's still alive. Stronger than ever. We're in 40 countries now. Community-driven governance, open-sourced contracts, independent validators. You built something that doesn't need you anymore. Her words lingered. A strange ache bloomed behind my ribs, half pride, half loss. "That's what I wanted," I said. "I know," she whispered. "But it still hurts, doesn't it?" By noon I found my father in the backyard repairing the old wooden fence that had been leaning since last winter. He was humming an old tune I hadn't heard since childhood, something my mother used to play on rainy Sundays. He didn't turn when I walked up. "Maya called me first," he said. "Said you finally did it." "I guess I did." He smiled faintly. "And now I don't know," I admitted. "For the first time in my life, there's no next thing to fix, no fight to win." He tapped a nail into the fence post eyes on the horizon. That's the hardest part for builders learning how to rest without breaking something new. I sat beside him on the grass. The air smelled like pine and sun-warmed soil. "Do you think I went too far?" He took a long time to answer. "You didn't go too far," he said finally. "You just went first." That evening I opened my laptop for the last time. The Aurora dashboard appeared, its familiar constellation of nodes glowing across the map. Thousands of users were live. I scrolled through messages from around the world. A farmer in Kenya funds irrigation through microloans. A student in Brazil, paying tuition without middlemen. A widow in Detroit, investing for the first time in her life. Every transaction told the same story: freedom through participation. I hovered over the admin panel one last time. There was only one button left: revoke root access. The cursor blinked beside it, patient waiting. I whispered, "You don't need me anymore," and clicked. The system responded instantly. Access revoked. A final line of code appeared on the console: ownership distributed. Control decentralized. Aurora lives. The screen dimmed to black. Later, I found myself walking through the city, the same streets I'd once hurried down, head full of numbers and deadlines. People didn't stare now. They nodded, smiled. A barista handed me a coffee and said softly, "You changed things." "Did I?" I asked. She grinned. "You reminded us we could." Outside, the sky had begun to turn golden. A billboard above a bank caught my eye. It wasn't mine, not officially, but someone had spray-painted across it, "We trust each other now." I laughed quietly. Somewhere, someone understood. That night, Maya and I met at our old co-working space. The lights were dim, the whiteboard still covered with scribbles from the first days of Aurora formulas, half-erased quotes, sketches of what we hoped it could become. She handed me a folder. "The press wants another interview." "I'm done talking," I said. "Then what are you going to do?" I looked around the empty room. "Teach, maybe. Or disappear for a while." "You," she teased. "Disappear." I smiled. Even revolutions need quiet endings. She laughed softly. "I'll miss this chaos." "It's not chaos anymore," I said. "It's evolution." When I came home, my father was waiting on the porch. He held 2 glasses of wine. "To endings," he said. "And beginnings," I added. We clinked glasses. The night air was cool, carrying the faint sound of crickets. "You know," he said after a long pause the night at that dinner, when I said, "No man wants a woman who stays home," I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. I didn't realize I was protecting myself from irrelevance. I looked at him, heart swelling with something deeper than forgiveness. We both had to unlearn what safety meant. He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," I said, "I think I finally understand freedom. It isn't rebellion. It's peaceful." The next morning, sunlight spilled across my desk. No alerts, no warnings, just light. I opened a blank page and began to write not code this time, but memory. About dinner. The humiliation. The quiet fire that followed. The rebuilding. The storm. The silence. I didn't write for the world. I wrote for the woman I used to be, the one who thought she had to prove her worth through conquest instead of creation. When I finished, I closed the notebook and placed it by the window. The wind caught the edge of one page, fluttering it open to a single line I'd written at the bottom. The system tried to own me. Instead, I taught it how to share. As the day stretched forward, I stood outside watching the sun rise higher, catching the faint glint of a plane slicing across the horizon. Somewhere far beyond what I could see, millions of small lights. The nodes of aurora were still pulsing quietly, carrying the proof that connection doesn't need control. And in that moment, I knew the story was no longer mine. It belonged to everyone who dared to build something true. Thank you for listening, I whispered to the wind, a soft smile on my lips. If this story found you, remember freedom doesn't begin when you win. It begins when you stop asking for permission. Then I turned toward the light and walked forward unafraid.